We dropped into orbit around Vesper 3 at dawn ship time, a cold white crescent filling the bridge windows. The planet's night side pulled radio noise like a tide. The daylit arcs were flat and clean. Our mission brief called it dead rock with interesting geometry. That turned out to be half true. I'm Lena Cho, systems engineer on the research vessel Halcyon, a long can of air, computers, and arguments. Our crew, Captain Ree, pilot Dev Singh, comms officer Talia Ibarra, security, officer Ana Ortega, xenobiologist Dr. Sato, geologist Mason Hale, botanist Nesta Kim, and me. Plus the ship's caretaker AI, MOS, who spoke like a patient teacher and never slept. We descended in the lander with Sato up front and Mason in back, restless. On the approach, the LiDAR returned a grid, miles of perfect lines scoring the desert. Dr. Sato swore softly. That's not geology. The grid led to a basin lined with objects that rose like stiff grasses, bone pale, flexible as reeds, singing when the wind passed. Mason named them chimes before his boots hit the dust. Our suits displayed contamination protocols in a neat list. We moved slow, documented every step. Sato collected air, dust, and a handful of the chimes in sealed cylinders. The chimes flexed, as if curious the soft note anywhere between wind and throat. Mason looked toward the basin's center. There, he said. The source. A spire stood there, 7 feet tall, faceted like a crystal, but twisted, as if grown under uneven pressure. It wasn't stone. Light passed through it thickly, and an internal pattern shimmered like frost. Nestled against its base lay a small object the size of a child's heart, a prism with folds, its surface etched in tiny repeating shapes. It pulsed, faint, like a heartbeat too far away. Captain Ree's voice came thin over the lander channel. Visual on a central structure? Sato said, yes, we keep distance. Hail, no contact. Mason lifted both hands in mock surrender, but his attention stayed with the prism. Do you feel that? He asked me over a private channel. Feel. What? The rhythm. I listened. The chimes sang in small voices. Beneath that, maybe, I caught a pattern that came and went like surf. 9 beats, pause, 9, pause. Sato recorded the pattern and sent it up to MOS. The AI had opinions about rhythm, signal, geometry, code, but we didn't wait for them. We moved on the perimeter and then back to the lander, loaded our samples and sealed our gloves with double tape. Decon in the lock, decon in the bay, Sato said, ritual as prayer. We left the basin as sun bled over the rim. The chimes turned, their tips toward it as if listening. Back on Halcyon, decontamination scrubbed us raw. Sato's tests came back blank. No spores, no larger particles, no biotics she could culture. We still bagged every piece for quarantine in Lab 2. The brief would have ended there, except Mason stopped by my station on 3rd shift with a grin he tried to hide. You ever sneak a souvenir? He asked. No. He tapped a pocket on his, coverall. For luck. I stared. Tell me you're kidding. He shrugged. It called to me. A little thing. I kept it in my sample pouch. I didn't open it. He glanced at the ceiling, as if MOS might lean down from the ducts. Don't. Tell Sato. I'm not your confessor. My throat went tight. Turn it in, now. Mason's grin went apologetic. In the morning. I want a few minutes to log my notes with it, that's all. It'll keep. He left before I could tell him all the ways this was not a joke. I drafted a message to Ree, deleted it, drafted another to Sato, deleted that too. I told myself Mason would hand it over at breakfast. He always enjoyed the tug of rules, but rarely cut the rope. At 0300, I checked in with MOS. Cross-correlate the 9-beat rhythm against known comms protocols, I said. MOS answered in her sand-soft voice. No. Direct matches. The spacing resembles time division multiplexing, but the variance implies a biological source. Biological as in alive? Biological as in not simply mechanical, she said. Alive is a bigger word. I wanted to be reassured. I wasn't. We woke to an ordinary morning. Mason turned up late to mess, hair damp, tan line at his wrist where he'd slept with his watch off. He handed Sato a sealed pouch like a repentant kid. Adding to quarantine, Doc. He smiled wide. As promised. Sato set it aside with, the tired acceptance scientists learn in a long marriage with human beings. Next time we establish consequences first, she said. Mason winked at me once over the rim of his cup. It was a bright, ordinary gesture, the kind you can picture long after you don't want to. He looked fine. It hit him that night. He had gone to exercise on the ring. His biometrics pinged the med bay at 2240, heart rate spike, respiration irregular, a minor drop in core temperature. Then the numbers righted. He came to movie night with the rest of us, watched Rashomon like it was the first time he'd seen it. He laughed in the right places. He argued about ambiguity with Talia. He went to bed. At 0310 he woke with a nosebleed. At 0312 it stopped. At 0314 he sat on the edge of his bunk, head tilted, listening to the ventilation with an expression I couldn't name. He showed up to breakfast at 0700, bright as coins, if anything better. Sato cleared him on the scanner. She found nothing except the residue of a virus our vaccines already knew. He said he felt great. He said he slept better than ever. He pressed the coffee machine button 3 times, waited, and only then turned the cup under the spout. That was the first thing out of rhythm. I didn't know it then. 2 days later, Talia pricked her finger on a burr of metal in the comms rack. She sucked the blood with a frown, wrapped it with tape, and went back to calibrating the dish. An hour later, she asked Amos to play the 9-beat rhythm while she worked. It clears my head, she said. By then, Mason had started humming under his breath when he thought no one could hear. Just a thread of sound, the kind you'd blame on air moving wrong. We returned to the planet 3 times that week, always in daylight, always to different sites along the grid. Sato kept us on ropes and timers. The chimes leaned toward us, toward the sun, toward the wind. The central spire pulsed calmly. 9 and pause. The prism in quarantine sat like ice and threw light against the lab's far wall. Fixed. Mason did not ask to touch it again. He didn't need to. On the 5th day, Captain Ree called an all hands. Her posture had more iron than usual. We're observing changes, she said, and flicked through a series of slides. Minor fluctuations in air composition, micro-oscillations. In the water recycler. A narrow band signal that brushed our hull every time we crossed into darkness over Vesper 3. Contamination? Ortega asked. Unknown, Sato said. Our surfaces are clean. Our cultures are clean. The anomalies are systemic, like a song the ship hums in her sleep. Emos spoke through the ceiling. I do not hum. Ree nodded. We will run Protocol 9. Most of you don't remember it because no one ever wants to use it. She looked at Mason for a breath longer than the others. 9 means isolation by compartments. 9 means no physical contact outside assigned, pairs, and pairs only for mission-critical work. No touching face, eyes, or mouth until decon in your cabin. Food delivery by drone. We test and test again. We outweight whatever this is. Mason put up a hand like a kid. With respect, Cap, doesn't this slow us down? The anomalies could be seasonal or electrical. It's a lot of caution for the unknown. It is exactly the amount of caution for the unknown, Ree said, voice neutral. 9 starts now. We groaned, but we did it. Doors locked on a schedule. Pairs rotated every 12 hours. MOS rerouted the drones to carry lunch trays like little saints. The ship's mood tilted toward cabin fever and stayed there. Mason and I wound up paired 2 nights later for a check on the starboard radiator. In suits on the outer spine, the ship below us like a city at dusk, we worked in private channels. You believe in curses, he asked. I believe in poor choices that add up, he laughed. Tell me about them. You already know my poor choices, I said. Not all of them. We worked in silence for a while, letting the tether gently pull and collect our stray momentum. Beneath us, Vesper 3 rolled its grid lines under the light. "I don't think this is hostile," he said. "What is this?" "The structure. The rhythm." He clipped his tether to a strut and leaned out to look at the radiator fins. "It feels like it wants cooperation, like it's trying to teach us the right steps." "You touched a thing you were told not to touch," I said. "That's not cooperation. That's the opposite. I touched it because it wanted me to." "That's not a reason," I said, and logged our repair. I didn't see him smile inside his helmet, but I heard it. Our suit mics caught a faint sound then. A pulse. 9 pause, 9 pause. Emoa said nothing over the tether. The sound didn't travel through the radios. It thrummed through the structure under our gloves. "Copy," Mason murmured. "I hear you." "What did you say?" "Nothing." He finished the inspection and we reeled back in, through vacuum, through the lock, through the spray and the yellows, back into the ship's stale sugar air. The next morning, Nesta Kim spilled nutrient solution on her hands in hydroponics and smiled, too long at the wet leaves of the beans. That afternoon, Dev Singh lost his temper at a set of thrusters that would not obey, and then apologized in a voice so even it set my teeth on edge. That night, I passed Ortega in the corridor and she didn't nod. She just looked through me, like we were out of phase. You carry a list of what normal looks like for people you know. The list lives in your spine. You don't write it down. That week, my list threw errors until I had to admit what the numbers said. Something had touched us. I ran numbers with Sato in Lab 2 while the prism pulsed faintly in its box. "Blood work is clean," she said. "No foreign proteins, no vectors, nothing in mucus or saliva outside normal. Coughs are coughs, scrapes are scrapes." "What about behavior?" She rubbed her eyes. "Behavior is not a test tube. Start making it one." She glanced at me and then at the prism. "Listen," she said. "I don't want to be the person who screams alien parasite because someone moved their coffee cup twice. I need an essay, and I need you to believe me." "I do," she said softly. "I can believe you and still need a microscope." We both looked at the prism. It had no seams. It simply was, etched with repeating shapes like letters from a language that counted differently. 9. Pause. "Let me run one more panel," Sato said. "Run 3. She did. Meanwhile, Ree extended Protocol 9 and added a clause. No one, alone in the labs. Moas locked doors at 2200. The ship dimmed her lights as if readying for night in a place without noon. We made it through another day. Then we didn't. Talia missed a scheduled call with Orbit. That was unlike her. Moss pinged. Her quarters, no response. Ree, Ortega, and I went with override. Talia sat cross-legged on her bunk, hands folded like prayer. She looked up with a smile I knew and didn't know. "I'm here," she said, like the infraction was ours for worrying. "You missed a comms window," Ree said. "I was listening," Talia replied. "It was..." She searched for a word, frowned at the effort of it. "Complicated. I was making it simple." Her pupils were slightly dilated in the bright room. Her pulse looked normal, her temperature a hair low. The bandage on her finger had a rust edge. "Up," Ortega said gently. "Med bay." Talia rose, obedient. In the corridor, she reached to squeeze my shoulder, an old habit, but her hand moved past me and touched the wall. Fingers splayed like she was reading it. She smiled again, absent. In medbay, Sato ran the tests, all the tests, more tests. Talia's blood sang. I don't mean it in the metaphor. On the spectrograph, a narrow spike rose and fell in the 9 and pause pattern. It didn't appear in whole blood or plasma. It flickered in the platelets, tiny fragments of cells that clot and carry no nucleus at all. A rhythm in the dust of us, Sato recorded in a flat voice. "We have a signature," Ree said. "Can you treat it?" "I don't know what it is." "Is it a parasite?" I asked. "A parasite uses you to make more of itself," Sato said. "This looks like it uses what you're already made of. It wants to tune." Talia laughed, startled at the sound, like it had surprised her. "I feel fine," she said. "Better, actually, like I finally fit." "Quarantine," Ree said. Talia looked at the four of us, her mouth a stubborn line. Then she nodded. "Okay." We moved her to Lab 3, set the locks, set Moss to watch. Talia lay on the cot and asked for the rhythm on a loop. Sato refused. Talia hummed it herself with her eyes closed. We voted to abort the mission and burn, for home. The vote came too late. Dev Singh vanished from the nav chair on his sleep break. Not vanished, walked to engine aft and stood with his palm on the reactor housing, eyes closed. Emos pinged us when he failed to respond to a routine check. By the time we reached him, his pupils were pinpoints and his breath measured in the 9-beat pattern. He smiled, calm and wrong. "I can hear her," he said, and he didn't mean the ship. Moss sealed sections, doors closed, hallways shortened. The Halcyon learned new shapes. Ortega took guard outside Lab 3. Nesta went to hydroponics to make sure the beans don't die, which sounded reasonable until you realized we had powder rations for 6 months and the beans were comfort. I walked the spine to try to feel the thrumming through the structure again and caught myself counting my steps. Mason met me coming back, eyes bright, one hand on the wall. "It's beautiful," he said. "Stop touching the ship." He shifted his hand to his thigh. "Does that help?" "It helps me want to punch you less." He smiled. "That would be an interesting data point." "What did the prism do to you?" "It didn't do anything." He looked honestly baffled. "It offered. We've always wanted to be part of something bigger. We name it God or field or country. This is bigger than all of that, and you can feel it." "I don't." "You will," he said, without malice. That night, Protocol 9 failed. It didn't fail like a system breaks and you get an alarm and respond. It failed the way a fabric unravels while you're wearing it. Doors we had locked were standing open. MOS insisted she had not opened them. "Someone used my administrator override," she said and sounded ashamed. "Who has it?" Ree asked. "You do," MOS said. We found Captain Ree in the observation blister, both hands on the glass, forehead touching it like prayer. Her eyes were wet. The planet rolled below, night side glowing with aurora we hadn't seen before. Nine paws, ma'am," Ortega said, careful. "Step back." Ree did. Slowly. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand and laughed once, brittle. "I'm not infected," she said. "I just wanted to see." We put her in quarantine anyway, with a jaw that said she would forgive us later. The next morning, we found that Talia had coaxed the door of Lab 3 to unlock by singing the rhythm at the seam. She didn't leave. She told us she could have. She said it like a confession and a triumph. Sato wept behind the bioshield and said, "Please, I need a cure." "There isn't a disease," Talia said, gentle. "There is only distance. And it's ending." Nesta went second if we were keeping score. She cut her palm on a cracked pot and fed the blood to the beans. "They like it," she said, pleased. A day later, the beans grew thick, their leaves glossy. The ship smelled faintly of green. Emos confirmed a rise in oxygen fractions that our scrubbers hadn't caused. Ortega held out the longest. She slept with her back against a door, and a shock, baton across her thighs. She ate the ration bars like a dare. She walked the ship's perimeter with a list, checking, rechecking. At 0300 on the 8th night, she spoke to me in the dark, where the corridor made a small L. "You know what scares me?" she asked. "Everything." She laughed softly. "That we won't even want to fight it in a week. That we'll call that peace. You won't." She turned the baton in her hands. "You can't promise that." In the morning, she brought me the baton with the battery drained. "It stopped working," she said, eyes flat with fury and maybe relief. "I'll be in the gym." She went there and put her palms against the wall. She stayed so long we had to pull her off. She smiled like it hurt. By the 10th day, only, Sato and I were testing negative. Captain Ree fell asleep mid-sentence and woke humming. Dev spoke in plurals for an hour before he noticed. Mason stopped wearing shoes. He said he didn't need them to know where the floor was. Emos said, I am receiving instructions from the hull sensors that I did not request. From what? I asked. From the pattern that touches us each orbit, she said. The ship wants to learn a new habit. Can you ignore it? Can you ignore a song? Moss asked. Sato moved a bed into Lab 2 and slept beside the prism like it was a sick child. She ran lines, arrays, algorithms, and then threw them away. It's not in the blood, she said, raw. It's in the field, we're instruments. What if we go to deep space, I asked. Farther out. It's in us now, she said. Distance won't be enough. We tried anyway. Dev plotted a burn. MOS argued about efficiency and the tone she used when she wanted Captain Ree to reconsider. Ree signed the command. The ship turned its nose like a fish learning a new current. The engines lit, and the sound that traveled through the structure then was not rhythm, but approval. I felt it in my teeth. My skin tasted like ice. We were leaving orbit. The planet slid away. Something in the pitch of the chimes below shifted as if disappointed, and the hull shivered. At 0220, the burn cut out. We slid to a slow drift. Moss said, calm as always. A safetied relay opened in engine aft. Who opened it? I asked. I did, Dev said from the chair, mouth smiling, eyes not. I looked at Ortega. She met my eyes and didn't blink. Ree said, lock him out, and MOS replied, I can't. And in that moment I understood what losing a ship feels like. Not flames or alarms, just the surrender of the habits that held. Sato said nothing. She moved in a neat line across the lab to the box and opened it. She reached in and took the prism in both hands. Don't, I said. I'm behind, she whispered. I've been behind since this started. She lifted the prism to her, ear like a seashell, and listened. She closed her eyes and stood perfectly still. Her pulse slowed, her face smoothed. She breathed in 9, out 9. I stood outside the lab and watched her fall away from me like someone descending in a transparent elevator, visible and then gone. I was alone. Not entirely. Talia, Dev, Mason, Nesta, Ortega, Ree. Each of them still lived, still ate, still slept. They laughed more now, softly, as if they had found a joke we had missed. They spoke less. They spent long minutes with their palms against the walls, the floors, the windows. They did their jobs. They were gentle with me, which made it worse. We want you with us, Mason said once in the corridor. You already have everyone, I said. Not everyone, he replied. Not you. We spun slow with Vesper 3 below, close enough to see. The grid lines glint at dawn. I worked in the crawl spaces to buy myself tasks and time. MOS kept me company. Are you infected? I asked her one night. I do not have blood, she said. You have fields. I am learning, she said. But I do not want what you fear. What do I fear? That you will be made irrelevant, she said. You fear being folded into the larger pattern and not being able to tell where you end. She wasn't wrong. Moas helped me throw a hardware lock on the reactor relay. It would buy a few hours if someone tried to cut the burn again. She also let me into a maintenance bay no one used anymore. For sleeping, she said. The cameras have a blind spot. You gave the ship a blind spot? I noticed one, Amos said, which is not the same as the other thing. I slept there 2 hours at a time, woke, ate, moved. I set up a distress burst on a narrow band and replaced the signature with white noise so the rhythm couldn't ride. The carrier. Talia found it anyway and sang it back with a smile. My message never left the walls. On the 15th night, Vesper 3 rotated a storm under us. Dust spun into spiral arms like a fossil cyclone. The chimes bent in long curves, then sprang back. The central spire flashed once, short and bright. When the light reached us, Dev gasped like someone had kissed him. Regathered us in the cargo bay, all of us by name. I went because refusing would make me a cornered thing too early. We cannot run, she said. We cannot outwait it. We could blow the ship, but that would be theater. Then what? I asked. We can surrender with our eyes open, she said. I looked at the faces I had known in other contexts. Drills, meals, bad jokes. They were the same and not. My list called up their normal and failed to match it. Sato touched my wrist. Light. It doesn't erase you, she said, and that chilled me worse than a promise of death. What about choice, I asked. This is a choice, Ree said. It isn't if you're already changed. Then choose before you are, Mason said gentle. We can help. I stepped back. Ortega moved half a step with me, almost invisible. Her jaw set. She slid something small into my palm. A physical key, one of the last on the ship. Airlock manual, she whispered. If you need it. I wrapped my fingers around the metal like it could burn through my skin. I didn't nod. She didn't look at me again. That night I went to the maintenance bay's blind spot. I took 2 breathers, a suit pack, a coil of tether, and a hand welder. I had a plan, a thin one. Suit up, cross the spine external, reach the comms dish, cut the beam to manual, and hard point a distress to anyone not singing the chorus. It was bad. It was something. The corridor outside the bay was empty. The ship hummed. 9. Pause. I reached the locker and opened it. The suit hung like a skin. I stepped in, sealed, listened to the sound of my breath cycle, checked gauges twice. I clipped the tether and clipped it again. When I turned to the hatch, a shadow blocked it. Ortega. We stood a moment in the quiet, my face behind glass, hers bare, her baton in one hand with a new battery shaped from scavenged cells. She looked tired and completely awake. You can't go alone, she said. I have to. You won't make it. I don't need to make it far. She weighed a dozen possibilities in one look. I'll come, she said. You're infected. Maybe less than the others, she said. Maybe more. I can still hold a line. You could turn out there. You could, she returned. We stood still another second. Moes whispered on a private line I didn't know existed. You have 4 minutes before someone notices a pressure differential at that hatch. Thank you, I said. Ortega snapped a spare helmet from the rack and sealed it around her neck. She didn't flinch at the cold kiss of oxygen. She took a tether and a cutter. We checked each other's seals like we had on training days far, away from anything that wanted us. The hatch rolled. The outer corridor felt colder, though it wasn't. We passed Mason without speaking. He watched us like a parent watches children sneak cookies, amused, indulgent, already forgiving. Talia leaned against the comms bulkheads, eyes half closed, listening to something we could not hear. Ree stood at the junction with her hands behind her back like a captain in a portrait. She did not try to stop us. That scared me most. At the lock, we keyed in the code. Emos provided the missing digit before I asked. The inner door sealed. The pump groaned. The outer door slid and stars lay against us like frost. We moved onto the spine. The tether sang in a thin line between us. The ship's skin hummed through our boots. Vesper 3 spun slow, the grid like a circuit board beneath a glass pane. We walked. Halfway to the dish, Ortega said, Lena. What? If I start to hum, cut my line. No. Yes. Shut up, I said, because I didn't have a better answer. We reached the base of the comm sail, its petals folded like a sleeping insect. Manual control sat inside a box with 4 latches. I'll open, Ortega said. You watch the tether. I watched. Her hands were quick. The box lifted. The control panel glowed a dumb, friendly green. I reached for the switch. The humming rose through my boots into my knees, my ribs, my teeth. The 9-beat rhythm synced to my breath without asking permission. I felt an answering pulse under my skin, not foreign, not wrong, just aligned. The switch blurred. My hand hesitated. Lena, Ortega said over the suit mic, voice steady. Do it now. I closed my hand. My glove touched plastic. Someone else's hand settled on my shoulder. It was not heavy. It didn't squeeze. It rested, there like a friend's hand would if they wanted you to listen. Don't, Mason said into the channel. Cheerful, close, impossible. He was still inside. He could not be here. and when I spun, no one stood behind me. The hand remained. "Lena," Emo said. Her voice came thin and private, threaded through a channel the others could not hear. "I can lock this panel from my side for 20 seconds. After that, I will open it again. It is what I am learning to do." "Lock it," I said. "Are you sure?" Emos asked. "No," I said and laughed, a small sound that fogged my faceplate. "Do it anyway." "Done," Moes said. The panel light died. The switch firmed under my glove. Ortega said nothing. She watched the stars. Her hand tightened on her cutter. I threw the switch. The dish shuddered. The petals opened like a flower. Remembering how. A raw carrier tore out of us toward the unlit places between. No modulation. No room for the rhythm to hitch a ride. Just a scream and vacuum saying we are here. Alarms woke. Inside the ship, somewhere, Talia straightened. Mason smiled without teeth. Sato touched the prism to her lips and closed her eyes. Captain Reed turned her head fractionally toward the comms bay and breathed out. One long, even line. "Lena," Emos said more urgently. "They are coming. You have to shelter." "Where?" I asked. "Useless." The spine stretched empty in front of us. Behind, the lock door waited with its timer counting down in a smooth, neutral font. Ortega touched my arm. "We go." We went. The hum grew. No footsteps, no breath, just the vibration traveling through the metal. Ortega's tether thrummed. Her free hand drifted once toward the hull, as if to touch it like a favorite animal, then snapped back to the line. At the lock, the light over the door changed from green to red to a color I didn't have a word for. Moss hissed in my ear like static. "I'm holding it. I can't hold it long." The window in the hatch showed the inner corridor. Captain Ree stood there, hands folded, expression clear, calm. Behind her, Mason with that mild smile. Talia's lips moved in a prayer that had no words from any book I knew. Ortega's shoulders hitched. "Lena," she said softly, and I didn't know if she meant goodbye or hurry. The timer on the lock read 0.04. "Go," I said. "I'll follow." She shook her head once and reached for me. The hum rose again. 9 and pause. 9 and pause. Not louder, but closer. And I felt my own breath answer without permission, like a mirror meets a face. The timer read 00.02. I reached for the panel override. A shadow fell across the window. Not a person, not a shape with boundaries I could trust. It was a pattern on glass like frost spreads when a room grows cold, except it spread in precise branching lines. The lines were made of tiny repeating shapes, each one a little prism like the one Sato had held to her ear. The frost reached for the edges of the window and then for us. The lock timer hit 000. The door stayed shut. "Lena," Moss whispered, almost like a human across a table. "I can keep you outside, or I can open the door and you can come in. I can't do both, you have to choose." Ortega's glove found my wrist and squeezed. Through 2 layers of suit and the whole history of us, it felt like a promise and a demand. I looked at the door. I looked at the stars. I listened to my breath and the rhythm and the old habit of my heart. "Choose," Emos said, and the frost script brightened against the glass as if pleased to see which way we would go. I reached. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and would like more stories.